morning, everyone. Good morning. And what on earth are you doing inside on the morning?
We're here to hear you.
Oh, you're so sweet. I just wanted to note that I chose the reading and the hymns because it syncs up pretty nicely with what I plan to talk about. And so here we go. You know, this is really a first for me. Aside from a couple of moments in junior pilgrim fellowship at the Congregational Church in Newtown, when I was 15 or 16, I have never found myself in a place like this. I wonder just exactly what would my parents think if they were able to walk in that back door right now. You see, they had both been over churched when they were youngsters. My dad's dad was a Presbyterian minister in the Midwest. My mother's parents were high Episcopalians in Manhattan. So they were avowed atheists. They gave it up. They said, you know, going to church 3 times a week is, you know, we're not doing that. And we have stopped any belief in anything supernatural. So these were my parents. These were the people that brought my brother and me up. And the unstated lesson that we were taught was that being an atheist meant being really intelligent. I don't know whether either one of them would have said that out loud, but I know that both my brother and I took that as kind of the unspoken statement they were making. I also doubt that they wanted me to be proud of my atheism. I did not earn it. I wore it like a glittering cloak of superiority, but it turned out to be a coat of armor. It was a handy way to keep people at arm's length. It took me about 60 years to figure that out. And well, you know what they say about being prideful. I was lucky not to actually fall, but I did gradually come to understand that my beliefs were thanks to my parents, not because I thought for myself. That was deflating. I do hope that they'd be proud to see that I found my own way, from obnoxiously stating most of my life that I was an atheist, to today where I say that I'm an atheist if I'm asked, but know that life is much more complicated and nuanced than that. This morning, as I wasn't reading this, but I was thinking about it, and I came to that point where I say I'm an atheist, and a little voice said, "No, you're not." And I didn't know what to do with that, but it gave me the thought that perhaps sometime a bunch of us could get together and explore what does one call oneself who doesn't believe in the supernatural, but nevertheless is connected with people and feelings and things that are ordinarily considered religious. So, off the topic. Kevin reminded me yesterday that my mother died 55 years ago today. I'm wearing her ring. I had just turned 24. And this month I turned 79. Sometimes I'm a very slow learner and I need to be shaken out of my previously firm convictions and broaden my vision. Oh yeah, I might once easily have said I don't hold stereotypes or prejudices, you know. That was easy, coming from where I came from and hanging out with the people I hung out with. It was easy to say. I believed I was open-minded. For a long time, I believed that. Looking back, I realized that I'd often tried to change other people's minds without listening to them. I tried to change other people's minds because I made assumptions about who they were and what they believed. I would have told you that I am completely open-minded, as I thought my parents were. But in fact, I found out how wrong I was by doing something completely foreign to me. In 2 life-changing meetings, I asked a complete stranger a question that surprised even me. This is it. Would you be willing to talk with me? That's really the title of this talk. And I want to illustrate that by telling you 2 little stories. The first one happened as a friend and I were traveling back from the New Orleans Jazz Festival in April of 2008. We stopped at a gas station in northern Louisiana, and I got out of the car to stretch my legs, and just right behind us, a really beat up old red pickup truck pulled up to the next pump. And out of the big old red pickup truck that was such a wreck came a wreck of a man. He was skinny, his clothes were too big. He had kind of greasy blonde hair. His teeth were not good. And as I was noting all of these things and letting them fit right into the stereotypes that I had of poor Southern folks, he walked over to me. And he said, I just got out of the hospital. I need to get home. I don't have enough gas to get home. He said, I have a stack of CDs in my truck. And I said, wait a sec. I said, would you be willing to talk with me for a minute? And he looked as surprised as I was to have said it. And he said, yeah, okay. So it being April of 2008, we were right smack dab in the middle of primary season. Bush couldn't be reelected. So there was a Republican primary and a Democratic primary. And the front runners at that point seemed to be Hillary and Barack for the Democrats, and McCain, and I'm not sure who else, but people including Rand Paul for the Republicans. And I'm a political junkie, so I really was curious about everybody's viewpoint. And I said, if you're willing to talk with me, would you tell me if you're planning to vote in the primary? Now, my assumption at that point is it's going to be Republican primary and he's going to vote for Rand Paul, or he's not going to vote at all because, you know, he's just this poor guy from Louisiana, right? So, excuse my runny nose. So he said, I always vote. Check. I said, oh, well, do you know who you're planning to vote for? And he said, well, I love Hillary Clinton. I mean, it literally staggered me. It could have picked me right up off the pavement. And I said, after I composed myself, I said, why? And he said, because she's so smart and she's held positions in government previous to this, and I just think she'd be terrific. But, oh, here we go. But I love Barack Obama. No, everything in my head is screaming, no, really, that's wonderful. Why? And he said, because he's bringing something in his speeches to us that we really desperately need. So I said, I'm so excited to hear that. That's what I'll be doing too. And I was trying to compose myself. I was trying to decide what next. And I said, didn't you say something about CDs in your car? And he said, yeah. He said, if you'd be willing to buy a CD or two, then I could fill my gas tank a little and get back to my home. So I said, sure, let me take a look at them, And I preconceived notions of what they were and what they weren't. I mean, they weren't going to be data C, but they, who knows? So I went over and I dutifully looked through all the CDs, and I felt like I was being somewhat saint-like in not just dismissing him out of hand, but I was going to look at the CDs and let him believe that I was interested in them. And when I finished, I said, this is really not my taste in music. It was all, country western. And I said, but I'll tell you what, I'll be happy to give you the equivalent of 2 CDs, and then you'll be able to keep them and you can get home. So I gave him the equivalent amount of money for 2 CDs. And he said, thank you so much. And I said, I hope you have a wonderful day. And by the way, he said, I can't tell anybody who I'm going to vote for. I said, why is that? He said, because I'd be run out of town. Nobody can know that I would like to vote for Barack Obama, much less Hillary Clinton. And I said, wait a second. I said, when you go into the voting booth, you're all by yourself. You're doing something for yourself, for your country, and you're alone. So nobody's going to witness what you do. And if somebody has the gall to ask you afterward who you voted for, you can either say politely, it's none of your business, or I voted, make up a name, tell them what they want to hear, no matter what. This is your private time. And then, so he had the money in his hand and he said, thank you very much. And I got back in the car and tried to understand for myself what impulse it was in me. I still don't know the answer to that. To ask him, would you be willing to talk with me? The second story happened 3 years earlier. In January 2005, at the time of Bush's second inaugural in DC. My friend Waffles and I went down to protest the inauguration. Some of you may know him as a well-known local activist. And we've been doing street theater and protesting together all over the place. So we went down, got there, found out that the security was so tight that it was impossible to do any protesting. There was a tiny little checkpoint with 2 Secret Service people in it, a male and a female. So if you wanted to go to the cage that had been erected across the mall, chain link fence cage, out of sight of Capitol, you could go there and protest to yourself, We didn't want any part of that, and very few other people did, but enough people did, so they were lined up outside that checkpoint on the sidewalk. So after we realized we weren't going to participate in any of that, Josh said, well, let's go up the sidewalk, a block maybe, and do street theater for the people who are waiting to get into the checkpoint so they can go into the mall and live in the little cage. Okay, well, great. So as we rounded the corner and started up the sidewalk, I noticed to my right on a patch of green, were about 8 anti-abortion protesters. All men, no surprise. Carrying placards on tall sticks, placards full color, fetuses, and chanting, abortion is sin and all the things they chant. There were about 8 of them. And the one closest to me looked to be about the youngest. And it wouldn't have mattered. All of a sudden, I found myself crossing the green and walking up to that young man and saying, "Would you be willing to talk with me?" And he looked nonplussed, of course. And he said, "Okay." I said, just to start off, I do not agree with you or the people that are here in any way. I'm entirely for women's rights, for the right to choose. That a woman's body is hers to use in any way she feels. So I don't agree with you. But I wonder if you'd be willing to listen to a story. And he said, "Yeah." So I told him the story of when in the mid-'80s, I was a volunteer in a pregnancy termination unit at a teaching hospital in Hartford. Excuse me. My job at that clinic was to assist women in the recovery room. So after the procedure, the women are still under anesthesia to a certain point, and they're put in recliners in a room, and I was there to help them when they woke up, give them anything they needed, talk to them, give them tissues, whatever was necessary. And I loved this volunteer job. I felt this was so rewarding, and lots of people had come through there over the month or two I've been working. This particular day, an older woman came in holding the hand of a tiny girl. They were both Puerto Rican. Grandma spoke with an accent. Was the grandmother, the granddaughter was 12. The granddaughter was a very, very skinny, possibly 75 pounds worth of girl. And she had been raped by her cousin, who was 20. And obviously the point I wanted to get across to this man as I'm telling the story is that there's more to it than selfish woman getting rid of the fetus. So I told him that story, and I paused at that point and I said, "Do you have children?" And he said, "Yeah." And you could tell they were the pride of his life. He just lit right up. And he said, "Yeah, I have 2 daughters. One's 11 and one is 8. And I said, "Well, then, what do you think about what I just said? 12 years old, 75 pounds, raped by her 20-year-old cousin. And here, against everything she believes, and everything her grandmother believes, and her entire family believes about their Catholic upbringing, they're here, and they're doing the right thing." And at this point, he's really listening to me. And then I said, "What if this were one of your daughters?" At that point, the tears started to roll down his cheeks. Frankly, I don't know whether the tears rolled down my cheeks or not, but I don't know what the word is for what I was feeling at that moment. I felt like I had made a connection, that I had gotten through to someone that I ordinarily would have believed I could not get through to. And as we were standing there, and as I, sort of ended the conversation, he put down his placard. And I like to think he also said to me, I'm not coming back here. I probably made that up. But he put down the placard and he was moved by the story. I then went back and joined Josh. And there's a little tiny bit more to the story from my point of view. When I was in that recovery room with Maria after she had the procedure. Now she's swallowed by the recliner. She's such a tiny little thing. I was waiting for her to wake up. I was sitting next to her, holding her hand, and she woke up and she immediately started to cry. And I said, "Are you in pain? Do you need something?" She said, "God's gonna hate me." And I said, "Maria, do you believe that God loves everyone?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, if he loves everyone or she loves everyone, you are loved." And she started to pull herself together, and I got her some water and we talked some more. And after 20 minutes or so, she was able to rejoin her grandmother. I often wondered what it was going to be like at home after all of this. But in terms of just asking someone a simple question, would you be willing to talk with me? To absolutely life-changing, stereotype-shattering, prejudice blasting things happened to me, and I've tried to carry them out, for the rest of my life. These things happened quite a long time ago. I fail regularly. I don't know about you guys, but if I find myself making a snap judgment about somebody based on how they look or what they sound like or how they're dressed or anything, sometimes I find myself, I've gone with that. But other times, somewhat based on these events that happened to me and just because it's the right thing to do, I try to stop and think, well, where did this come from? Where did this stereotype come from? So anyway, to this day, I don't know why I asked either of those men if they would be willing to talk with me. But talking with them in the way that I did changed my life. And I have not been the same since. Thank you. All right. It says here that I'm going to say closing words and a prayer. I guess the closing words are that if what I've said today means anything, if you want to try that sometime, you might be surprised by what happens. I'm sure a lot of people in this room do that anyway. I know you, and I know what wonderful spirits you all have.
Ginger, would you go talk to my brother?